Welcome back to the Baggage Claim Podcast. I'm your host, Hatu. And today we're going to talk about how to establish healthy boundaries in a relationship, whether it be a marriage or some kind of intimate relationship. And I'm here today with my husband.
Hey, my name's AJ Hatu. I'm your husband.
He's my husband. And we actually sit around and talk about this quite often. We were just talking about this morning because I woke up and I'm a little irritated, and he could read it all over my face. And when he saw that I was irritated, he kind of went to the other room and closed the door and was just like, here, I'm just going to let you have your space. So after we had that moment, we were just, hey, let's go ahead and hop on a podcast and talk about it. So how do you want to start this?
I mean, it's just really learning about how to communicate clearly to your partner, learning boundaries, learning how to be respectful in a relationship, and how to ask for respect for yourself. I mean, there's definitely different ways to address boundaries, different ways to address self-awareness of how someone is feeling and how to react to that person. It's a very broad subject that we can probably do 10 podcasts on, if not more.
Well, I think establishing healthy boundaries starts with your own self-awareness. You have to understand, your limits and your boundaries.
Right. And if you don't understand your limits and your boundaries, and then can you really learn how to be happy like yourself? Can you be happy?
Well, having the self-awareness too. So like we talk about all the time, we both grew up as people pleasers. And we were doing any and everything for everybody else until we kind of hit a brick wall later on in adulthood. And we never set boundaries with those people at the beginning of our life, when we were teenage years, young adulthood, and we didn't have that self-awareness like we do today.
And I think that boils down to not having a parent or someone that is like a role model to you as a young adult or as a teenager or even a young kid that knew how to set boundaries themselves. You were just so busy and so worried about pleasing everybody else that your own boundaries and your own happiness got shuffled to the side because you were
crossed
because but then by the time it's crossed, you don't even realize it's crossed because you don't even know what really a boundary is, and you just kind of go along with it. And that happens for a very long time until either you start reading books on boundaries, or you go to a therapist, or you do any one of those things and you realize that your boundaries were crossed, and you never set boundaries, and this is why you are the way you are, from a deeper reason, a parent or like a role model, like I spoke about earlier.
Right. So I think like we were just saying, the first thing is having your own self-awareness, right? Sometimes you have to hit that brick wall to understand, people are crossing your boundaries. But then two, you hit on a point that when we were younger, there were people or parental figures in our lives that would cross our boundaries, but they may not have understood what boundaries were at that point. And so I think another part of having a healthy relationship or having healthy boundaries is clear communication. How do you talk to someone who continues to cross your boundaries? How do you let them know this is how I feel, and have them understand and get on everybody get on the same page?
There's a fine line in that. So you do it by first addressing it when it happens, right? Be it a parent, boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, whatever the case is. You do it by, if you cross my boundary and I tell you, hey babe, I don't like this, it makes me feel this type of way, please don't do it again, right? That person knows that really upsets you or bothers you. Now, like I had a parent that did that to me constantly, and he didn't care until I got older and I realized, okay, he's not going to change. So either this person's going to be in my life and they're going to continually cross my boundary, and I have to be okay with that, or you come to a point and you're like, you know what, this is not okay, and I just have to cut communication off with this person. Maybe not, I did that with my father because of how toxic and how much of a boundary pusher he was and how abusive he was, mentally and physically. I had to do that, but I'm not saying everybody's case is to the point where you should just cut off people in your lives, but maybe you back off. You realize this person is not going to respect your space, is not going to respect you as a person, is not going to respect your boundaries. So you back off and you don't let them get close enough to where they can push your boundaries. You create a barrier yourself to protect your mental stability and your mental well-being.
Right. But what do you do when they do cross that boundary after you've created that distance?
Then you probably have to go a step further by cutting them off.
No contact.
No contact. Or maybe if they're not listening to you and the relationship is that important to you, maybe you should try therapy with that person. Maybe somebody else can intervene and show them what they're doing is wrong, or show them what they're doing is affecting you in some type of way if you really care about that relationship enough.
Yeah. So it sounds like what you're saying is just you need to define your own limits
Yes.
before you make the decision to kind of go no contact or distance yourself from someone. You have to understand your limits, your boundaries, have your own self-awareness. So again, it comes back to you.
It comes back to you because if someone's constantly pushing your boundaries and making you feel uh, upset or gives you anxiety when you're around them, or when they call you get anxious, they raise your
Oh,
blood
that's
pressure,
terrible.
all that, it's terrible, and it's affecting you whether you see it or not. It took me a long time to realize. It took me almost 3 years of therapy to realize how people were pushing my boundaries and what it was causing me, like the damage it was doing to me as a person. It was affecting me. I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do because I was so busy trying to fix people or trying to help people, when in actuality I needed to be working and fixing on myself.
Right.
I needed to do that, and I owed that to my kids because I wasn't a great dad at the beginning when my kids were born, because I was so busy people pleasing, my ex-wife at the time, my father, my ex-business partner, whatever it was. I was so worried about everybody else, but I wasn't taking care of myself.
Right.
And I was there for my kids. Obviously, I was there every day and I took care of them. But emotionally, I wasn't happy. So there's no way I can make anybody else happy.
Well, I feel like in my previous before I had met my ex-husband, I was very strong. I was very strong-willed. I had established pretty strong boundaries. And then when I met him, it was just like something crumbled inside of me. And I think part of it was him and the way, his MO was to break me down, right?
That
and 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 kind of knock my self-esteem down so that I wouldn't be this big strong person. And I would constantly try to define my limits. I would constantly try to speak up for myself. I feel like I've always had a self-awareness, but when you get around those toxic people and they start gaslighting you, they start belittling you, they start making you feel like you're crazy, you're the problem, then it was too late for me to kind of backtrack and go to him and say, "Hey, we don't have healthy boundaries with each other. How can we fix this?" Because he was constantly crossing, 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 crossing. And after, like you said, going through years of therapy, I realized that I was trying to fix everybody. I didn't know that about myself. Um, I mean, I had self awareness, that my self esteem was low, that, the confidence that I once had was no longer there. But I didn't have the self awareness that I was actually a people pleaser. And I was trying to please this man in any way that I possibly could in our marriage. I mean, I even went to the point of, hey, let's go be swingers because you want to go and screw our entire town. Like, how can I keep you happy? Although we never went through with it, and I don't feel like I could have. I felt desperate in that situation because I had never defined my limits and I was willing to do any and everything. So now you and I are together and we've been together for almost 7 years. It's completely different. We have healthy boundaries with each other. We talk, we sit and talk, we have clear communication. We both have self awareness because of the damage that was caused to us in previous times. Um, we've defined our limits with each other and we've become assertive with each other to where we say, hey, this is my line, please don't cross it. Where it sounds like, in our past relationships, we didn't have that.
Well, we weren't raised to have that. I know I wasn't, and it even began with my dad, and even my ex-wife. Like, you're not good enough. You're a loser without me.
That's the gaslighting.
You can't do anything without me. I own you. I'm the boss of you. You'll never amount to anything. No one loves you like I love you. No one is
Mhm.
ever going to care about you like how I care
There's
about
no
you.
such thing as Prince Charming.
Right. I mean, we watched a show last night, and the guy said, "You can meet the right person, but it also has to be at the right time."
Right.
So, and I wholeheartedly believe that. You know, if someone's gonna gaslight you and treat you that way, and you're stuck in that, it's hard to get away from it because when you're in it, you think it's normal, but it's not normal. None of it is normal.
Well, it's because they change your sense of reality. They make you feel that they are the only person that can give you whatever you're seeking.
Right, but they're toxic and they're bringing you down and they're keeping you trapped, and they don't want to see you happy because they're not happy. How can someone that you're trying to fix that's not happy want to see your happiness? Someone that's not happy doesn't want to see your happiness because they're not happy.
Yeah.
So that in itself is the foundation for a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
Unless they're willing to put in the work and to put in the time and effort it takes to learn your boundaries and to learn how to be respectful towards you, and for them to heal whatever they have inside of them from childhood trauma or teenage trauma or whatever the kind of trauma that they have, because obviously if they're broken and you're trying to fix them, something happened to them that's making them that way. You're saying you're trying to fix them. You're not trying to fix a happy person.
Right.
You're trying to fix a damaged person that is depressed, that is going through some things, that may be addicted to something, whatever the case is. So that in itself, if you're not happy and if they're not happy, they don't want to see you happy. So in turn, no one is going to be happy in a relationship. You can't fix anyone. No one can be fixed unless like you're a clinical psychologist and they're your patient. But then that's not going to work because they're your spouse.
Right. Well, I mean, this goes back. I mean, we've been through a lot, and I'll share this here. AJ and I met, and we did not meet in a very traditional way. My ex-husband was very loose in terms of parading around our town and engaging in activities that a married man should not be engaging in. And AJ's wife was, or ex-wife was doing the same thing. And they actually met each other while we were all still married. And they had created a relationship. And when we finally all divorced, AJ and I finally met. And we had met on the premise of our kids because we wanted to ensure that our kids were happy, our kids were taken care of. We knew the capabilities of our previous spouses, and we just wanted to ensure that our kids were, again, taken care of and that you and I were on the same page because we were on the opposite ends of this. And so we met, we became friends, and we were damaged when we met each other. But I think we healed each other and we connected, and some people would call it a trauma bond. But the way that we bonded was because we had very similar stories, and the stories were our ex spouses. And I mean, that's kind of how we met.